Before Thursday night's game against the Boston Bruins, let's go back and reflect on the North Carolina State Fair trip that it was for your Carolina Hurricanes.
Your Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you to the Everydayer for making this your first listen of the day. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, talking everything about your Carolina Hurricanes. I'm your host, Zach Martin. I'm the credentialed Carolina Hurricanes beat writer over at the Hockey Writers. Also do a weekly column on the Chicago Wolves called Wolves Weekly. I'm the co-host of the Search Cast, which is a weekly Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all my duties here at Locked On Hurricanes. Got a fun reflecting Wednesday episode for you guys as we get to go over the North Carolina State Fair trip by the numbers, where the team ranked overall in the 6-game road trip, who stood out for the Hurricanes in terms of points, and we look at this as a possible tone setter for the season. Who knows? I guess we'll see. And then I'll give you my 3 stars of the road trip. But before we jump into all of that, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So, like I said, we're going to look back at the trip by the numbers, see where the team ranked overall in terms of power play, penalty kill, and stuff like that. And looking at, who kind of stood out for the team overall in terms of points and stuff like that, and kind of just reflect on, as we're a couple days removed from the trip overall, and just, seeing if it's a possible tone setter for the season overall. But looking back what the Carolina Hurricanes did in terms of, where they were at, ranking wise and all of that. So, of course, we all know the Hurricanes went 5-1-0 in the 6 games to go on the road trip. And that, for that 10 points, it tied them from first in franchise history in terms of points over a 6-game span. So, if you're the Hurricanes, you'd love to see that, for the fact that you kind of were able to go on the road, face some tough opponents, have some very up and down games, a lot of drama, but still being able to come out on the positive side of tying a franchise record for most points in a span. You love to see something like that, especially when you're going into a season where there's a lot of question marks. How's the team going to do with a new roster, with all the roster moves that we saw over the summer? How are the new guys going to fit in? Is the team going to score goals? Are they going to put up points and stuff like that? And then you go out on the road for your first long road trip of the year, 6 games in 12 days. You're facing teams that people thought, okay, these teams are on a pretty good start. Like I said, even with the Edmonton Oilers being where they're at, you still can overlook them. And being able to come out on that side of things is something that is really encouraging if you're a Carolina Hurricanes fan, knowing that, okay, even with the influx of roster changes, the front office also making changes as well, affiliations and stuff like that, where it's a loud and busy summer for the Hurricanes to be able to come and do that. I think pretty much everyone will take that kind of a trip for sure. In terms of the penalty kill, how about first overall in that game? Of course, is since October 18th, 95.2%. Yeah, you give a 1 power play goal the entire trip, and then it was against Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers. You will not be upset about that. I mean, 100% would have been great, but hey, don't look a gift horse in the mouth when you look at the fact that the Carolina Hurricanes went 95.2%, and you give up 1 power play goal in 6 games. If you're Rod Brandon and the coaching staff, you will be very happy to take that, for the fact that you limited a lot of teams to very, very little scoring, and you went 5 straight games yourself on the power play. So special teams overall, you will take that to the bank and enjoy that, for the fact that you found a way to make your special teams be special on a road trip like that so early on with like a rookie in Jackson Blake. You've got new guys in Robinson and Carrier and Roslovic and all that, Sean Walker. So, yeah, you will very happily take how that worked out for them. Also, first in shots per game, 37.5. As we know how the Carolina Hurricanes are, they are not afraid to shoot the puck when necessary, and 37.5 over shots per game over that 6-game span. Not surprising. And I mean, hey, they scored a lot of goals over the trip, so you can't be too upset about that. They were also second in goals allowed per game. They only let up 2.17 goals per game. That's only second, which honestly also very, very good if you want to look at the fact of, outside of the Blues getting 4 goals. I mean, Edmonton had 2, Calgary had 2, the Canucks had 3, Pittsburgh had 1. So yeah, outside of the Blues game where they had 4, pretty much everyone was mostly held to 2 or less outside the Canucks getting that 3. So you're getting a 2.17 in terms of, goals allowed per game. Not a thing that you're going to be very upset about for the fact of how you look at how the team is overall and where you're looking at the fact that the defense did tall. They did their jobs, and now you're kind of putting yourself into a good situation where it's like, okay, yeah, even with how the Tampa Bay game went, now you're kind of putting yourself in a really good spot to where it's like, okay, now we can kind of see where we're at. And even with the goaltending too, I mean, when you look at how the season is now after 4 games where, Frederick Anderson is a 1.48 with a, goals against with a 941 save percentage. And even, with Pyotr Kochetkov having, the game against the Blues and, letting an easy one in on the Canucks for them to, being able to tie it up. I mean, he's now at a 2.77 goals against and an 894 save percentage. I mean, even then too, like goaltending is giving you really great games overall and putting you in a good spot as a team. So coming out of this road trip, you're kind of feeling good about yourselves and, what that season looks like. And in terms of who kind of stood out in terms of the points wise, how about Martin Necas? 10 points, 4 goals, and 6 assists. I mean, have a start to the season, Martin Necas. I mean, leads the team in points with 11, tied for the team leading goals with 4, with Jack Roslovic and Shane Gostisbehere. I mean, going into the season, you were really hoping that he would start the season on fire, especially with all the drama, over the summer where it's like, are the Kings going to keep him? Are they going to trade him? What's going to happen here? How is he going to be, how is he going to be with all the, the up and down with the rumors of, being on the trading block, or staying and stuff like that. And, in the end, he does stay. And right now, like I said, 11 points in 8 games, well over a point per game. And that's something you were hoping for last year. And now you're kind of hoping that, this is a good start to this year. You're 8 games in, 4 goals in 8 games, 11 points overall. So for someone who went from 3 million to 6.5, that's kind of what you want out of a guy like Martin Necas, who's on the rise as a star player, even, getting to where it's like, okay, this guy should be a household name and someone that should be feared around the league overall. Yeah, that kind of a road trip where you get 10 points. Yeah, you'll gladly take that for sure. So it's a very good sign to see for the fact that the $6.5 million man is putting some points up. And then Sebastian Aho, 2 goals and 5 assists. And of course, you saw him have those, 2 game win goals in overtime. It's no surprise how, when you look at this at a super guy who should be considered a superstar in Sebastian Aho, yeah, you should be seeing road trips like that from him where you're getting, that many points in a span, and the fact that you got 2 game winning goals. So not very surprising that Sebastian Aho did what he did. So now there's the trip by the numbers, but now we're going to look at this as, could this be a tone setter for the season? So I don't know, do we think that this could be a good sign for the Hurricanes as the season goes along for the rest of the 24-25 season? So stick around as I'll talk about all that here in a second on a Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long with PrizePicks. PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks sit, I can get my money as quick as 15 minutes. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. PrizePicks is the best way to win real money this hockey season. Which players are going off? Which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. Now, for me, I could possibly go into games where I can think that, Sidney Crosby could have more than a half a point. Or maybe I think, Nathan McKinnon could have more than, half assists. But the thing is, you can do that and more with PrizePicks. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONAHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Once again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONAHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Where can you do that? Well, you can do that at PrizePicks, where you can run your game. Welcome back to a second segment of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So like I said at the end of segment one, do I think this could be a tone setter for the season for your Carolina Hurricanes? And when you look back at the fact that you got 10 points in 12 games, you do beat, at the time a red hot Calgary Flames team who've been kind of struggling as of late. But I mean, you still can't take away from the start they had where you're 5-0-1 and the Hurricanes come into town and you kind of win in a game that was pretty decisive, but also let them back in it too. And then, you look at an Edmonton Oilers team who is struggling to start the year. But I mean, they struggled last year as well. But, as I've said over the last couple of episodes, it's still Connor McDavid. It's still Leon Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, Zach Hyman, Evan Bouchard, and all those guys. You really don't want to overlook Edmonton. And even the Vancouver Canucks, you go into the game where they're 4-1-2, but it's still the Vancouver Canucks with Quinn Hughes and JT Miller, and now they, Brock Besser, and now they got Jake DeBrusk. Kevin Lankinen is really, started the season hot for them. So I mean, it's one of those things that the Western Canada should be really can't overlook of where those guys are at. And yeah, you drop one game to the you drop one game to the St. Louis Blues. It is what it is, but you're pretty decisive in your win against Pittsburgh, which you should have been. Seattle, that was another game too where you should have taken care of business, and they did. So in reality, yeah, you should probably beat the teams you should. Yeah, maybe there's some games where you might struggle against a team who's kind of middle of the pack, but still has some stars you need to keep an eye out for, like Robert Thomas and all that from the Blues. And then there's going to be some games where it's going to be a tight contest against teams who are kind of considered to be playoff guys, teams who should win in the playoffs, possible cup contenders. Edmonton, whoever thinks is going to do it. Vancouver, some people think they might make a run. Calgary, they are above expectations of what people thought they were going to be, but still a team that you should, possibly beat. It might have been a tough contest. So, yes, it's still early in the season. I mean, you're talking like 8 games out of 82. That's so many games, as some people have put it. But for me, I think it's a good sign of what possibly the season could be, that you're seeing a guy like Jackson Blake have 4 points in 8 games, 2 goals and 2 assists for being a rookie, playing a lot of fourth line minutes, where it's, some games he might play more depending on how he is. And you saw that against Pittsburgh of how that line of Robinson, Drury, and Blake at the time were getting a lot of minutes because how good they were playing. Now, as the road trip from Edmonton on saw that it was Carrier, Drury, and Blake, and honestly, that was still a good line too for how good they were able to set up Willem Carrier's first goal of the season. That's still a solid fourth line. You look at how once again Seth Jarvis moves down to the third line with the Jordans to kickstart them, and now they've been played really well too, once again. And, it's a good recipe of seeing, a guy like Irby being able to slide down to the third line and be with the Jordans and still being productive. I mean, you look at too, like, adding Robinson to the second line of, Nietzsche and Kakaniemi. And, like I said, Robinson has some sneaky speed, and right now it's very matching to where, those guys are performing really well. I mean, we saw what Martin Nietzsche is at. 11 points in 8 games. You'll gladly take that. How about just Barry Kokaniemi? 6 points in 8 games, all assists. Yes, you would love to see, goals from him for, how he's making $4.82 million. I know I posted I made a post yesterday on X, Twitter, however you want to call it, saying, hey, what if I told you that Barry Kokaniemi is 5th on the team in points and 2nd in assists with 6, and it's all by assist? And then, there's some people that are very excited to see how his start is. Hopefully he keeps it up. And there's some like, okay, yeah, that's good. But, where are the goals? Look how much he's making. And I understand, for guys making 4.8, you want to see score goals. But, for Jesperi Kotkaniemi, what you really want to see out of him is winning faceoffs, being a defensively minded center, setting up teammates and stuff like that, and, doing his job. And right now he is. So, I mean, you will gladly take the start that he's been on. And then, just adding Robinson to that line as the trip went was really good. You see how fast that line is and how they're being able to set each other up. So, I mean, it's something you really can't scoff at. Of you're looking at that road trip and like, okay, they made some line adjustments. It clicked well against Edmonton, and they wrote it out for the last 3 games of the trip. So it's one of those things where they push the right buttons, and it worked. And then you look at the top line of Svechnikov, Aho, and Jack Roslovic. You're adding Roslovic to the right side. As I said, as everyone talks about, he's got the speed, and 4 goals in 8 games, and it's one of those things where Roslovic has put himself into a good spot to where it's like, okay, this guy has fit in really well with the system. And Jack's even talked about it too, where being in this system where it's all about transitions and speeds and rushes and stuff like that and zone entries, it's very fitting of what he can do as a player. And I think you're adding you look at Winnipeg, you look at Columbus, look at New York, they used him in certain ways that worked for them, but you're kind of like, okay, where are the points at? How's he productive? So you see some up and down years from him in those areas. Of course, like I said, we're 8 games in, but it gives you hope that you look at where he's at overall too and how good he's playing. It gives you a sense of, okay, maybe, Jack Roslovic might have found the system that works for him, and right now the Hurricanes maybe unlocking another level to his game. Who really knows? But you would hope to see that, especially he's on a 1-year deal. Maybe there's a way to, if he keeps it up this season and gives you 40 points or something like that. Maybe you're talking contracts essentially with Jack Roslovic. Wouldn't be upset with that if that's kind of how it worked out, But then you look at how Sebastian Aho did. He kind of had I wouldn't say a slow start, but a very quiet start to the season. You saw how he's got like 4 points in like a certain number of games. And then he comes out and has like 2 game-winning goals in overtime, and being Sebastian Aho that you would think he would be. So then, of course, Andrei Svechnikov, he's having a good start to the season. Some points here and there, some penalties and stuff like that. But, you can definitely tell that Svech is ready to move on from last season where he comes back late, gets injured a couple more times. So it's like you're kind of ready for him to see turn the corner as well. So if you're the Carolina Hurricanes overall, it's one of those things where you're seeing the production up and down the lineup, defense-wise. I mean, Shane Gostisbehere is on an absolute tear right now. 4 goals and 2 assists. It almost feels like that he wasn't gone to Detroit for a whole season. Like he just found a way to slide himself back into the lineup. He's on the 3, on a line with Aho and Nietzsche for the 3, on the overtime 3-3. He's paired with Sean Walker. Sean Walker has to put up points yet, but he's doing his job. He's being defensively sound, moving the puck around and being transitional. So it's kind of working out for them. Slavin and Burns are doing their job. Burns has gotten some points recently. Jacob Slavin being Jacob Slavin, just shutting the door on everyone. Orlov and Chatfield are playing really well as well, so you can't complain about that. And of course, I talked about goaltending earlier too, how good they've been. With Frederick Anderson having a sub 2 goals against and a .940 save percentage. And with, Pierre Kachekov, outside of, the Blues game where you can't really blame him for a lot of the goals. And, you would love to have that one back against Vancouver, but, he's a .89 away. He's super close to being back in the 900 save percentage. His goals against are back under 3 at a 277. So, I mean, overall, all aspects of the game, the Hurricanes are doing phenomenally well. And I think for this, I think you're looking at a good tone setting to the season to where you go on the road, you get 10 out of 12, you're beating teams you should be, you're battling in games against other teams and still getting wins. So for me, even in a year where you consider as a transition or maybe a slight step back, I don't know why people thought the Hurricanes were going to completely fall off, but I don't think they did. I think, like I said, it's one of those things where it's like it's not they're going to miss the playoffs. It's going to be a team who are going to make the playoffs. It's just, is it going to be a little bit tougher? Probably. But I don't think it's a team where people are thinking, they're going to miss the playoffs entirely. Like, no, they took a slight step back. It's not like they took like leaps and bounds back. So for me, I think this is a good tone setter to don't overlook the Hurricanes because it's still led by Rod Brind'Amour and it's still with a core of guys who've been here for a very long time. So I think this is a tone setter to the season of like, yeah, the Hurricanes are still here and let's just have a fun ride overall. So that's kind of like my thoughts overall so far into the season of like, yeah, this could be a really good tone setter for the team overall going into Thursday night against Boston with so many games left into the season. But now we get to talk about the 3 stars of the road trip and who I think really stood out overall. So stick around as I'll go over my 3 stars of the North Carolina State Fair road trip here in a second on a Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Here we get to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers give it $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports book partner of the NFL. Welcome back to segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So like I said, I'm going to talk about my 3 stars who I think did really great over the State Fair road trip for your Carolina Hurricanes. And for me, it's tough when you want to look at how guys played over that trip overall because you want to talk about production on the offense, how good some defense has been and stuff like that. Just being an overall great asset to that because you want to talk about certain guys who played really well. Of course, we talked about Martin Necas, Sebastian Aho, which definitely deserving of discussions and stuff like that, but a guy who I really want to look at, I think is an underrated third star of how he played, especially on this trip. You have to give it to Frederick Anderson. And he's my third star for the fact that you look at the Pittsburgh Penguins game, only give up 1 goal, had a .962 save percentage, saved 25 of 26. Goes into Edmonton, it's Connor McDavid and all of them. He does let up the 2 goals against Connor McDavid. 33 of 35 saved, but a .943 save percentage. And how about going into Seattle, giving up a goal in that one, stopped 18 of 19, had a .947 save percentage. And now you're looking at a season where like I said, he's at a 148 goals against, a .941 save percentage. He's now got 3 wins and only that 1 loss, of course, against Tampa Bay. But for me, it's you could go all skaters for your 3 stars, and I think there's gonna be some honorable. There's a couple honorable mentions for sure, but you got to look at how you have to give it to Freddie Anderson for how he played. Coming into his last year of his contract, he missed a lot of last season due to blood clot issues, and as of right now, right now the Hurricanes do have him as out. They did recall Spencer Martin recently because Rod Brind'Amour did say that he did come up gimpy in their last game against Seattle, so we don't know how long Frederick Anderson's out for. He is going to be evaluated. Hopefully it's nothing long term. But you gotta give some flowers to Frederick Anderson, just how he played, especially over that road trip where you're looking at a guy who was able to put up, only gave up 2 goals in one game and gave up 1 goal each, and just having a .940 save percentage or better in all 3 of those games. He shut the door, he kept the Hurricanes in it, and did his job. So that's all you can ask for out of your goaltender. Now, another guy I want to see, and this is where I have to do the honorable mentions now because it's tough when you look at how many guys who did so well on this road trip. And for me, we talk about Sebastian Aho and how good he did, where he had the second most points, and he did get 2 game-winning goals. But I think for me, it's like he's kind of someone who should be someone who should be a top, in the 3-star conversation just because of how they've played. I totally understand that and get that. And I think for me, it's one of those things where he's my honorable mention in terms of being a 3-star for the road trip, because I think there's 2 other guys who really stood out in other facets of what they did overall. So I think it's kind of why for me it's a situation of who do I put for Aho as an honorable mention, who's going to be my second star. So Sebastian Aho is for me an honorable mention. He was right there, but I think you got to give some flowers to a couple other guys who really kind of stepped up in a big way for the Hurricanes, and one of them for me is Shane Gostisbehere, who is my second star. Talk about an absolute run of where you're talking 3 straight games with a power play goal, just overall, just an insane road trip for him. When you talk about how, outside of the Seattle game, he pretty much had a point in every game of this road trip. Power play goal against Pittsburgh, St. Louis, and then Edmonton. Got an assist in the Edmonton game as well. Got an assist in the Vancouver game. Seattle was the only game where he did not put a point up, but he did have 3 shots on net. 21 shifts. The first game he played over 20 minutes because, of course, he had 6 power play opportunities. But you look at how Shane Gostisbehere has played, and for me, it's one of those things where he was gone for a year. How is he going to come back fitting into the system once again? And he's been coming out flying. He's put himself in a good position where he is right now at the top 3 of points for the Hurricanes. Tied for the team leading goals with 4 with Nietzsche and Roslovic. So it's one of those things where I would love to put Sebastian Aho in the top 3 or 3 stars of the trip, but for me, Shane Gostisbehere is someone who, coming back in after being gone and acting like he's never been gone, I think that's where you got to give a lot of props to him. And of course, my first star, it has to be Martin Nietzsche. I mean, you look at a guy outside of the St. He didn't score any points in St. Louis, was a -2 that night, but then you come back and a goal and 2 assists against Edmonton, a goal and assist against Calgary, an assist against Seattle, a goal and assist against Vancouver, and that game against Vancouver, 1 shot, 1 goal. Calgary, we have 1 goal and assist on 6 shots, 1 goal and 2 assists for 3 points, and that's 3 shots against Edmonton. Martin Nietzsche right now has put himself into a great position where, you're now over a point per game guy by a good margin for right now. You're a +4. Averaging 17.47 minutes of ice time. You're putting you have a shot percent, you have a shooting percentage of 25. For me, Martin Nietzsche has been playing phenomenal hockey to start the year. That's what you want out of your $6.5 million man. Of course, I've talked about him in the last couple episodes. So for me, it's a no-brainer of just Martin Nietzsche putting a lot of people on notice for what he's done this season. And I talked about all offseason, do I want to keep him here? Should he stay? Should he go? And I've been on the Martin Nietzsche train for a long time. You can hear me talk about him on the other podcast I did, the Search Cast, or you've seen my articles, where I wanted him to stay. But, if he wanted to leave, okay, then so be it. But I'm glad he did, and he's been playing phenomenally well, and that's why I think he's my first star of the road trip. But let me know in the comments, who would your 3 stars of the road trip would be? Like I said, for me, Frederick Anderson, Shane Gostisbehere, and Martin Nietzsche. And of course, the Albert mentioned Sebastian Aho. But of course, like I said, Sebastian Aho, you could easily put him in the 3 stars. For me, he's just an honorable mention because you should be getting productions out of a superstar like him. And you have to give flowers to other guys who really stepped up for the Hurricanes overall on the road trip. But like I said, let me know in the comments what you think of who your 3 stars should be for the latest road trip for your Carolina Hurricanes. That will wrap up Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Thank you for making this your first session of day. Now, for your second listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to keep up with me, once you're Zach on X, podcast is LO_Hurricanes. I have a link to my bio where you can find all my articles at the Hockey Writers, or just go to thehockeywriters.com for all my Carolina Hurricanes and Chicago Wolves coverage. For my other podcast, The Searchcast, just look up The Searchcast on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. For this show, it's all on all podcast platforms. Just look up Locked On Hurricanes. Leave a 5-star rating and review, because if you do, I might just read it on the show. And also for the YouTube side of things, look up Locked On Hurricanes. Subscribe, hit the bell notification. They let me know to zero to miss the show. Hit the thumbs up button. Let me know you like the show as well. Share with all other Caniacs. They become everydayers just like you, because we're well over 1,000 subscribers. But let's keep this ball rolling. Let's get to 2, 5, 10,000. Let's just keep this thing rolling as the season goes along. But I hope everyone enjoyed this Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Hope everyone enjoys their Wednesday. And until next time, as always, let's go Canes.